Hi everyone, my name is Joseph Koenskin and welcome to my studio. Today what I'm going to be doing is working on one of my paintings, specifically the one that's behind me on my easel. The only thing I have left to do is the blue jay, so that's what I'll be doing today. I'm going to show you some of the colors that I'm using and what I do to mix them to get the colors that I want for this blue jay, and kind of the overall process of how I'm going to paint this bird and bring it to life and sort of finish off this painting. So I'm going to turn around and start mixing some paint and get started. Okay, so before I get started, why don't I just run through some of the colors that I'm going to be using, and then I can start mixing some paint. So here's the colors I'm going to be using. I'll start with the blues. So first I've got phthalo blue in the green shade, and ultramarine blue, Prussian blue. I'm using a Payne's gray, white, black of course, and then some alizarin crimson. And the reason I'm using some alizarin crimson is because parts of the blue jay are going to have a purple sort of tint to it, so I'll just need a little bit of that to kind of tint some of these colors purple. Okay, so for the color that's on the head and on the back, it's kind of like a sort of like a purpley blue. So I'll just mix some ultramarine, some Prussian blue, the tiniest bit of alizarin crimson. That seems pretty good. Okay, and so from here it's just a matter of blocking in some of these mid-range colors just to get the overall shape, and then after that I can start adding some detail. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start blocking in sort of the main parts of the blue jay with sort of the mid-range value of each part of the bird, and this is just simply to get an overall feel of what the colors are going to be like, and kind of establish a bit of a value structure. And so on. And so this part here for this blue, I've taken that previous blue mixture and I've added a bunch more ultramarine blue, a touch of the phthalo blue, and a bit of the Prussian blue. And this is going to give me a nice vibrant, nice saturated blue color that's going to be for the wing feathers and for the tail feathers. And then I'm going to mix up a little bit of a gray just to block in sort of the belly and the face, and some of the white spots that are going to be on the ends of the wing feathers. And then I'll mix up some dark colors for the beak and the eye, and just get an overall sort of sense of what the bird's going to look like in some of its basic shapes and colors. Okay, so now that it's blocked in, it looks kind of flat and a little bit sort of bulky, but that's okay, because what I can do now is I can start building up some of the details, and I'm going to do that by starting with the head of the blue jay, bringing in some of the shadows and some of the highlights and deepening some of the colors and really bringing out that detail. So I'm going to start mixing some paint, mostly for the shadows, and let's get started adding some detail to the head. Okay, so for some of the shadow parts on the crown of the bird, like on the top of the head, I'm just gonna try and keep it sort of to like a dark bluish gray. So a little bit of Payne's gray, tiny bit of alizarin crimson, just to kind of give it that purple tint. And then just a tiny bit of white, but I want to keep it, fairly dark, so I might need a little bit more. Okay, that should be good. That should be a good start. Okay, so I'm gonna head up to the painting and start working on some of these shadows. So what I'm gonna start by doing here is start developing some of the shapes and some of the structures of the feathers, and what you'll see me do a lot in this part is kind of go back and forth between light and shadow, because what'll end up happening is something will be too dark or something will be too light, and I'll just end up going over things kind of a few times to really establish that detail and really get the shape of the bird and the proper highlights and the structure of the feathers. And so here I'm just kind of blocking in a lot of the darks and a lot of the shadows and trying to really establish that shape. And this part here in particular is going to be a little bit more of a challenge, because the top part of the back is really subtle, and trying to get that three-dimensional look and that three-dimensional shape is going to be a bit of a challenge. So I'm really going to work it up slowly, by not getting too heavy with the shadows and not too heavy with the highlights. And so I'll kind of go back and forth and just kind of bring up that detail and bring out that shape. And what I'm going to do next for the wings is I'm going to basically just line all the feathers just so that I know where everything is, so that I can start adding details and highlights and shadows. So here I'm just taking my time and slowly working up where all the feathers are, and just outlining each individual shape and structure. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start adding some of the highlights and bringing out some of those iridescent colors that are part of these blue jay feathers, because they kind of shine like with this really nice blue iridescent color. And so I'm gonna have to go back and forth over top, and you'll see me do that here, where I add a highlight and then go back over it with like a little bit of a wash to kind of bring out some of that really rich blue color. So I'll just keep highlighting, and I'll just keep adding more detail and keep refining some of those edges of the feathers, and bringing in some of those shadows and deepening some of those colors. And so that's what I'm doing here now, is I'm starting to deepen some of those colors and really bring out all those structures and refine some of those details of each of the feathers, and what the bird is gonna eventually look like and have that really nice feel and that really nice soft texture. So I'll keep going in and adding more shadows and highlights over top, and just refining the details and going from there. Okay, so now that most of the color on the back and the wings and the tail is done, I'm going to move on to my favorite part, and that is going to be the little black stripes that are on all of the feathers on the wings and the tail. And this is really going to bring it to life and really make the blue jay look like a blue jay. So I'm going to start mixing some of those colors, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. Okay, so to make the black stripes on the wings and the tail, I'm just gonna mix up not quite like a black to start, more of like a gray. So I've got some ultramarine blue, just kind of give it a tint, a little bit of Payne's gray, some black, and some white, and that'll kind of give me like a dark sort of bluish gray, not totally black. I'll go in after with a darker color and deepen some of those shadows and some of the black stripes where they need. So let's get started. Okay, so for this part where I'm painting in all these black stripes, I'm going to be looking at my reference photo a lot, going back and forth, just making sure that each one of those black stripes is in the right spot. And so right now this is sort of that lighter bluish gray color, and the reason I do that is because some of the stripes kind of shine with the highlights of the contours of the feathers, and so I want to keep that sort of overall shape and structure. So I'll paint these lighter stripes, and then I'll go in soon after with a darker color and sort of deepen those shadows and just really accent some of those black stripes and make them look nice and deep and nice and rich, and I'll clean up some of the other little lines and little feathers that I'm going to be doing, and just to kind of give it a nice sharp crisp look. And I might outline some of them with some lighter colors and just go back in, and it's sort of like working each part of the bird just sort of over and over again to just kind of clean everything up and make it look nice and refined, and go from there. And then I'm going to go in and highlight all the white spots, and this seems to really bring it out and kind of make it pop and just bring the whole thing together and really make those blue jay feathers and that blue really stand out with some of these white stripes. So the last thing that I do, and I always save this for last, is I take this really fine brush and I just paint the highlight in the eye, and then this really brings the bird to life. Okay, I think we can call that finished. Thank you so much for joining me in my studio and following along as I painted this blue jay. This painting was really fun, and I enjoyed the process, and I hope you enjoyed the process and getting a little bit of insight into what I do to bring these animals to life. So thank you for following, and thank you for joining me.